Hi everybody, welcome to World History Official. Don't worry, I'm back. In this channel, I will tell you about all mysteries and things that you might not know before. We hope these videos in this channel can give you more knowledge that helpful to you guys. Before I jump into main section, please click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any update. So, here we go. I have seen and heard many people write and utter these words in reference to the worldwide conspiracy and the New World Order. Indeed, this idea has been around a long time. It was a central ideological tenet of the Nazis, as well as Nazi sympathizers and apologists. However, hopefully now we are at the point in our understanding where we can cut through the confusion. Thanks to the recent book, The Trigger, by David Icke, the work of researchers who have investigated the history and origin of the Jewish race, which doesn't exist, the work of those who have exposed the Khazarian connection to Jewishness, and the work of those who have exposed Sabbatian Frankism cult, we can now talk about this taboo topic with facts, reason and clarity. We don't have to blame the many or a collective, the Jews, for the actions of a few. We don't have to be unfair to all the innocent Jews who have unjustly branded as conspirators when many of them are victims, not perpetrators of the grand conspiracy. No, it's not a Jewish conspiracy, not exactly, it only appears to be so, because the inner core of those hiding behind Jews are Zionists, and the inner core of Zionism is Sabbatian Frankism, a satanic cult which exploits Jews to achieve its own ends. The deliberate confusion around Jewish identity. The triangle of race, religion and nationalism. Jew and jazz player Gilad Atzmon grew up in Israel, but once he carried out his forced service in the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, he became a changed man. He saw through the one-sided Zionist propaganda. He describes in his book, The Wandering Who, a study of Jewish identity politics that during the 1982 Israel-Lebanon war, he caught a glimpse of captured POWs. He writes that the place was a concentration camp. The inmates were the Jews, and I was nothing but a Nazi. He has since been very outspoken against Israeli behavior and Zionist crime. One of his favorite sayings is that Jewish power is the power to stop you questioning Jewish power. Atzmon likes to point out the contradictions and confusion behind Jewish identity. What makes someone Jewish? He claims the Jewish power is displayed through Zionist politics, which capitalize on people's confusion around Jewish identity, the triangle of race, religion and nationalism, and that Zionist power brokers claim Jewishness is whatever they find most convenient at the time. If you try to pin them down, you can't catch them, says Atzmon. The carefully cultivated myth of the Jewish race and Jewish DNA. For most people, the immediate answer would be that being Jewish means you are either ethnically Jewish, of the Jewish race, with Jewish DNA, or you are religiously Jewish, a follower of Judaism. However, here's the problem. There's no such thing as a Jewish race or Jewish DNA. That is a carefully cultivated myth which suits many purposes. Firstly, it united Jewish people who up until that point had lived in many different countries. Secondly, it transformed the focus of Jewish identity from religion-based to race-based. This prepared the way for Zionism, a political philosophy or nationalistic movement. It is easier to convince a race of people to be nationalistic, to move and create a new homeland, than adherents of a religion. In many interviews such as this 2009 one with RT, Jewish professor and historian Shlomo Sand, author of The Invention of the Jewish People, says that it is simply not scientific to say a Jewish people as Jews are connected by customs, beliefs and religion, not race, genetics or DNA. He highlights how the Nazis tried defining Jews racially, but that didn't work because ultimately they couldn't define who was a Jew. He points out with great evidence that Jews have always been a religious community which has included many converts. Orthodox Jewish rabbis. Zionism has hacked Judaism. Many Orthodox Jewish rabbis have explained why traditional Judaism is diametrically opposed to Zionism. Judaism and Zionism do not mix, as Zionism violates cherished tenets and commandments of the Torah and is basically a modern settler colonial exploitation and theft of land, and is often accompanied with a mindset of viewing Arabs as inferior or even subhuman. In presentations such as this, Jewish Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro makes many fascinating points about Jewishness and Zionism, which contradict commonly held ideas about them. Zionism was not created to deal with anti-Semitism. The truth is, Zionism was created to make a Jewish homeland, according to Max Nordau, assistant to Theodor Herzl. Historically, Jews were just part of the religion of Judaism. You could not be a Jew in any other way. They are not an ethnicity and they are not a race. The holy land of Jewish people is the Torah or the synagogue, not a geographical location or piece of dirt. Many Jews converted become to Jews, but how could this be if Jews were a race? You can't convert to a race. Ze'ev Jabotinsky, the founder of Jewish terrorist group Irgun, later absorbed into the IDF and a leader of revisionist Zionism, was recorded to have said, "The Jewish people are a nasty people." Jabotinsky profoundly influenced future Israeli leaders Menachem Begin and Benjamin Netanyahu. The Jewish nationalist movement was very similar to black nationalist movement. They just decided that all black people were a nation and that all Jews were a nation. Now Jews didn't have to be religious, but rather 1. Loyal to nation, Israel, 2. Speak Hebrew, now a national language not a holy language as it originally was, and 3. Fight in the Israeli military. First Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion said he didn't believe in the Jewish God of the Bible, yet God promised them the land. Zionists convinced and tricked the Jews that they were a nation, not a religion. Zionism turned religious Jews into militaristic Jews. Zionism mocked Judaism. It hijacked the definition and essence of Judaism and Jewishness. The Messiah of Zionism is the Holocaust. A Holocaust museum is set up in every town, more than a synagogue. Jewish rabbi Yisrael Dovid Weiss also makes similar points about Jewishness, Judaism and Zionism. This perspective is completely in alignment with the many Jewish groups, organizations and voices which oppose Zionism. The Khazarian connection to Jewishness. Hungarian scientist Arthur Koestler wrote a 1976 book, The 13th Tribe, where he brought the Khazar hypothesis to a wider audience. His hope was to disprove a common Jewish racial identity and therefore end anti-Semitism. In 2012, Israeli researcher Aaron Elhaik published a study claiming to prove that the Khazar ancestry was the single largest element in the Ashkenazi gene pool. Shlomo Sand declared himself vindicated. This Jewish media didn't deny it, there were articles about it in the Haaretz and the Forward. The basic idea is that the Khazars, a Turkic people who lived in a large medieval state called Khazaria in Eurasia near the Caucasus, between the Black and Caspian Seas, converted to Judaism in the 8th century and then migrated to Eastern Europe in the 12th and 13th centuries. Elhaik concluded that Ashkenazi genes were far more heterogeneous than previously thought by others such as Oster, who proposed the Rhineland hypothesis of Jewish ancestry. Elhaik did find a Middle Eastern genetic marker in DNA from Jews, but he stated it could be from Iran, not ancient Judea. There are clearly massive implications to this information because the bedrock of the Zionists' claim is that Palestine used to belong to and used to be inhabited by Jews. This claim is little legal or moral validity as it is, just because my ancestors lived somewhere 2,000 years ago doesn't mean I can automatically take that land now. However, as the Khazarian connection and origin of Jewishness shows, the claim is not even true anyway. It's not a Jewish conspiracy, it's the cult of Sabbatian Frankism. Judaism and even Jewishness itself was infiltrated and overtaken a long time ago by a strange messiah called Sabbatai Zevi, also spelt Shabbatai Tzvi. Some of the best sources for this information are Christopher John Bjerkens, Rabbi Marvin Antelman and Clifford Shack. As you may know, Judaism is a Messianic religion, meaning they believe in the concept of a Messiah, Mashiach, who will come to save them. Any religion which believes in such an idea always leaves the door open for its followers to be emotionally manipulated by hucksters, claiming to be the Messiah or the chosen one. Sabbatai Zevi was one such individual. In 1665, Sabbatai declared himself the Jewish Messiah. In 1666, appropriately, he was proclaimed to be the Jewish Messiah by Nathan of Gaza. Sabbatai became so famous and popular that he amassed over 1 million Jewish followers. After his rise to power, he began to abolish many of traditional Jewish ritualistic observances. Wikipedia gives the reason for this as because, according to a minority opinion in the Talmud, in the Messianic time, there would no longer be holy obligations. The fast of the 10th of Tevet became a day of feasting and rejoicing. According to Antelman, the Sabbatian Frankists had a fundamental belief that the Messiah would return either when all people had become good or when all people had become bad. So, they reasoned that they could precipitate the arrival of the Messiah by pursuing the dark path. Therefore, they set about inverting the practices of their own faith. Another interpretation is that Sabbatai's movement, which became known as Sabbatianism, was really a form of Satanism, since it involved orgies, incest, pedophilia, sacrifice and much more. Satanism is not only characterized by ritual and demonic possession, but also by inversion, where everything is turned upside down. Bad becomes good, sin becomes virtue, the forbidden becomes the permitted. The Sabbatian movement was succeeded by Jacob Frank, born in Poland in 1726, who claimed he was the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi. The Jewish authorities in Poland excommunicated Frank and his followers due to his heretical doctrines, one of which was the idea of purification through transgression, aka redemption through sin. In other words, discard and break all traditional norms, rules and more satanic behavior. The entire movement behind Sabbatai and Frank became known as Sabbatian Frankism and their adherents Sabbatian Frankists. The Don Crypto Jews. At one point in his life, Sabbatai Zevi was forced by the Sultan of Turkey to convert to Islam. Similarly, Jacob Frank converted to Christianity. In both cases, Sabbatian Frankists maintained their beliefs and culture, but outwardly appeared to follow a new religion. The Jews who continued to follow Sabbatai became known as Donma Jews, from the Turkish word don to convert. These Donma Jews eventually rose to great power centuries later. For instance, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the first president of Turkey, was a Donma Jew and a descendant of Sabbatai. The entire house of Saud, which today rules Saudi Arabia, is descended from Muhammad ibn Sa'd and greatly influenced by Muhammad ibn Abu al-Wahhab, who were likely Donma Jews. This explains why Israel and Saudi Arabia have had such a close relationship for years, when you might think they would be fierce enemies. This also explains why the Saudis spearhead and champion Wahhabism, a distorted form of Islam, if you can even call it Islam, which advocates aggression and violence. Saudi Arabia is a veritable fountainhead of terrorism and is easily the biggest state sponsor of terror, apart from the US and Israel of course, even though that label is falsely used to defame Iran. Taking a step back even further, Sabbatian Frankist leaders deliberately engineered the introduction of Donma Jews into nations, which were unified and strong, in order to break them up and change their policy to make way for the creation of the Zionist state of Israel. With Donma Crypto Jews in so many places, it has been an understandable mistake that so many people have concluded we live in a Jewish conspiracy when it was really something else altogether. Jews have been used to disguise the real manipulators and their agenda. Christopher John Bjertens writes in his book, The Manufacture and Sale of Saint Einstein, The Propaganda of Supremacy. The racist Zionists failed in their attempts to buy Palestine and populate it with Jewish colonists because the vast majority of Jews did not want to go to Palestine. The Zionists caused the First World War in order to break up the Turkish Empire and weaken the Muslim nations, which they feared would unite to fight against a formation of a Jewish state. Sabbatian Frankism. Infiltrate and control from the inside. You may have noticed at this point some striking similarities between the way that Sabbatian Frankists infiltrated rival or opposing religions and then gained power from the inside, and the way that the secret societies of the NWO have infiltrated key movements and centers of power to rule them from the inside. The reason is because the cult of Sabbatian Frankism is a central threat of the NWO itself. According to Shack, the Rothschilds are descendants of Sabbatai Zevi, which makes perfect sense, since the Rothschilds are probably the most central and powerful NWO family bloodline and are behind the creation of Israel, home of the inner core of Zionism and Sabbatian Frankism. Clifford Shack writes this widely quote passage in the Sabbatian Frankist Messianic conspiracy partially exposed. Through infiltration, stealth and cunning, this invisible network has come to rule us all. 41 years after Sabbatai Zevi's death, in 1717, they would infiltrate masonry guilds in England and establish Freemasonry. Zevi's successor, Jacob Frank, would have a great impact on the inner core of Freemasonry known as the Illuminati, formed in 1776. Freemasonry would become the hidden force behind events like the American, French and Russian revolutions, the creations of the UN and Israel, both world wars, including the Holocaust, and the assassinations of the Kennedy brothers, who together with their father, tried to thwart the efforts of the network on American soil. Sabbatian Frankism, Freemasonry, the Illuminati, etc., all pose as one thing and act by infiltrating their targets and overtaking them. It is a textbook perfect example of a host-parasite relationship. The parasite hijacks the host, controls its behavior, for the benefit of the parasite, not the host, lives off its life force, and often ultimately destroys and kills it, even if that means the parasite risks its own life in killing the host, although it tries to find a new host first to repeat the same process. Circles within circles within circles. Those who have studied the worldwide conspiracy may have noticed a familiar pattern. The true controllers like to arrange themselves as an inner core within a larger group that itself is within a larger organization. G. Edward Griffin spoke about this regarding the Round Table of Cecil Rhodes, a man closely connected to the Rothschilds who did so much to advance his British-led version of the New World Order. Rhodes was behind the creation of the Round Table societies and think tanks including the RIA, CFR and many others. Griffin stated that Rhodes set things up so there was an outer group that thought it was in charge, but really unbeknown to its members there was a group within that which was guiding it, then, unbeknown to that middle group, there was an even smaller inner group which was guiding it that was really pulling the strings. The situation is similar with the Jews. Some people superficially believe the Jews are running the world, not realizing that there are Zionists within that groups which call the shots. Then, to take things one level deeper, the Sabbatian Frankists are the group within Zionism that is in charge. A Jewish conspiracy? No. A satanic cult ruling the world? Yes. I have been writing for years that black magic rules the world and that we need to expand our awareness and muster up our courage to face that fact that a satanic cult is pulling the strings of power behind the scenes. Yes, there is obviously a Jewish connection to the NWO conspiracy, but it's not a simple story. There is not exactly a Jewish conspiracy but rather a Sabbatian Frankist conspiracy. Not all Jews are involved or know about it. In fact, the great majority do not and are being used like all non-Jews. This hidden secret society within Judaism and within Zionism practices the Luciferian philosophy of do what thou wilt and the satanic inversion of everything. Bad is good, wrong is right. Jews are just a cover for them. Psychopathic Israeli leaders want more Jews to immigrate to Israel, not because they deeply care about Jews, nothing could be further from the truth, but because they simply want more Jewish bodies in Israel so they can maintain their ideal Israeli demographic, having a majority of Jews, so it is a Jewish state. They don't want to lose control of Israel to Arabs, who they consider subhuman. It's high time Jews realized the whole game plan here and refused to go along with it, especially with plans rapidly developing to turn Israel into the headquarters of the NWO. Israel does not represent you. Israel is not your nation state. Israel brainwashes its children into thinking that the whole world hates Jews. We do not. Understanding the information in this video can be a relief for those of us who are non-Jewish because now we can explain the real cause of the Jewish concentration of power and the background to the idea of a Jewish conspiracy. It's time to cut through all the confusion with the sword of truth. Please share this video far and wide, especially with your Jewish friends, so we can come together and stop falling for the anti-Semitic trap laid out by the Sabbatian Frankists and Satanists who use innocent Jews for their schemes. So, these all for today. Hope you guys enjoy this video, thumb if you liked it, subs if you loved it, see you next time.